Three distinctively different creators, one very special show. Welcome to this edition of Stereophonic. The American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, ASCAP, the first U.S. performing rights organization, is governed by its members, songwriters, composers, and music publishers. Our three guests today are all very successful ASCAP members, and in honor of this month's ASCAP Expo, we've curated segments from three diverse creators. First up, composer Pinar Toprak, the first woman to score a major action feature in the Marvel Universe, Captain Marvel, produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. She'll be followed by songwriter, producer, and musician Dave Bassett. With songs recorded by artists from Shinedown to Josh Groban, you might know him best from two huge hits, X's and O's, co-written and produced with Elle King, and the anthem Fight Song, co-written with Rachel Platten. Third in this triumvirate of talents is Lindy Robbins, one of Hollywood's most accomplished pop songwriters with hits for Jason Derulo, Andra Day, Demi Lovato, David Guetta, Dua Lipa, Jennifer Hudson, 5 Seconds of Summer, and Britney Spears. Give a listen to these three brilliant ASCAP writers right now on Stereophonic. We are so pleased to have with us today an amazing composer whose career has just blossomed gloriously within about the last year. You know, I usually don't interject a personal note, but I think for our listeners it would be helpful to know this. It was about a decade ago that a young composer asked me out for coffee because she was looking for some things to help jumpstart her career, take her career to the next level. And that person was you, Pinar. And
That's
within
right.
the decade since then, things have just really opened up for you.
Thank you. I remember that coffee so clearly. I remember almost everything we've talked about that day, and it was so valuable. All your advice was just priceless. A lot of people just say, just work hard and all very general things that we know, but you were very just practical. That's the best word I can come up with.
I'm not usually thought of as being that practical, but I guess in terms of personal relationship skills, because a lot of our business is presentation, personal relationships.
Absolutely.
It's like kind of setting the stage. And I read an interview with you. You said an interesting thing. You said when you were very broke, you would take people out to lunch.
That's right. I was in massive amount of debt because of lunches, because I made sure I took them out to nice places, and I even became a member of Soho House when I was broke. I couldn't even. It was so crazy. This is now almost 8 years ago. I definitely did not have the resources to afford that even, but I did that just so that people would come, and even if they didn't want to meet me, they'd probably want to come to Soho House. So, a lot of investment.
That's really good advice. And for our listeners who don't know, Soho House is a very exclusive membership kind of club where they have them in the major cities, and they're great for meetings or for lunches, or
Absolutely.
Shall we say to impress people who are not members
That's right.
of Soho Club.
That's right.
So that's a really interesting thing. We talk about the statistics, and again, we're not going to dwell on this, but the reality is the reality that the world of composition has typically not been dominated by women, certainly.
Right.
Although the times they are changing.
Yes.
And that's great. And you're a part of that change.
Yes, I'm very grateful to be a part of it. Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. So I saw a panel that you did. I think our mutual friend Leanne Summers had moderated a panel that you did kind of talking about the contributions of women in music right now. And it's a magical time. We talked to a lot of music supervisors here and a lot of people on the other elements of bringing music to picture together. And there's certainly a much more expansive world than it was back in the day.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great time to be a woman. It's always been.
Yeah.
But now more people know about it.
Good for women.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Good for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you came to Los Angeles, you also studied here in Los Angeles, right?
Yes, I got my master's degree in composition.
So all of these studies that you have done, people come to the world of composition from many different places right now. So in some ways, your path is traditional in that you are trained to do what it is that you do, correct?
Right.
Is that helpful, I would imagine?
Absolutely. And, once you start adult life, once you're out of school. Your time for education, although I think it needs to be a continuous thing your whole life, but just practicality because you have to make a living and all these things, it gets reduced. So I'm a firm believer in, when you're young, when you are able to devote most of your time to studying, just front load all that as much as you can. But the most important thing is having a curious mind forever, because if you're curious, you don't have to be the smartest one, the most talented one, but if you're the most curious one, you're always going to evolve. You're always going to get better.
Interesting. When you talk about curiosity, you talk about artistic curiosity, musical curiosity, life curiosity?
Everything. I don't think you can be a great artist without being curious about life, because you have to live life to channel it in some way in your art. So I think curiosity needs to kind of spill into every area of your life. But, the more technical side of things, for example, in what we do these days in media composition, whether you're writing for film, TV, video games, we're expected to provide very high quality mock-ups and demos and all these things. And it's a very hybrid world these days. You're expected to be great at everything in every genre. So with that, you have to be on top of everything all the time. I'm very geeky, if that's the right word, when it comes to learning new gear, new plugins, new things, new ways of doing things. And I always ask people, so how do you do this? How do you do that? Because I always feel like there's a better way to do something and more efficient, faster way of doing something. So I think, that kind of curiosity is very valuable. But I still study scores. I kind of always am humbled by how much I don't know, and occasionally depressed by how much I don't know and how little time I have to know all the things that I want to know.
You had the advantage of working under some amazing composers as well when you came here to Los Angeles, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and what you learned from great people?
My first job ever was an internship at Paramount Music Department. I got to see a lot of great composers. I came into the scoring stage then, and I was present in a lot of scoring sessions, so that was very valuable. And right after that, I had the opportunity to work with Hans Zimmer. I was a programmer there for a while, and that was just a dream because he's one of my all-time idols, always will be. And it was an amazing experience. It opened my mind up in ways that I couldn't even imagine in terms of technology and just work ethic and everything else. And soon after that, I worked with wonderful composer, orchestrator, arranger, William Ross, which was a very different experience because I kind of came from the high-tech Hans world to Bill's world where, he was talking about like penmanship and, it was very analog all of a sudden. And I've been very blessed.
Pinar, I wanted to ask you about one of the people that you worked with on your resume, and that's an incredible composer, Danny Elfman.
That's right.
What was the project?
It was Justice League.
Wow.
Yes, it was unbelievable.
What's it like to work with Danny? Because he's definitely walks his own path.
He was incredible. I mean, he's, when you have these heroes, these idols, and Danny Elfman has certainly been one of my idols forever. You almost don't want to meet them because you're like, well, what if they're not nice in person, And I met him. He's just the sweetest, kindest soul that I've ever encountered. He's a class act in every way. And just a wonderful honor being a part of that project. It's still very surreal to me.
Danny has a very atypical background as a composer, having kind of come through the pop ranks into where he is right now. Does that influence the way that he sees music, do you think, or the way that he deals with the score?
I think so. I mean, he's a filmmaker. The way he writes and crafts his scores, it's just, and having kind of been a witness to it lately, he's just incredible the way he approaches everything. He's Danny Elfman. There's nobody like him. He's amazing.
You work with Marco Beltrami, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you collaborate with another composer?
It's different with everyone. Marco's wonderful. I have tremendous respect for him. With Fortnite, mostly he wrote the themes and I wrote the score. And he's very cool, and he trusts me, and we have built a beautiful friendship and working relationship, and I'm very grateful for.
Yeah. In observing your career, I don't want to use the word breakthrough, but it seemed like you got very much more on the radar with a film called Light Keepers.
Right.
Right. And I remember when that came out, suddenly we were hearing more about you. It was a film, Richard Dreyfuss was one of the people involved with the film. And it just became, all of a sudden, there you were. Is that the way it felt for you?
I always was there for me. I can't get away from myself. But that film was very special. I really loved being a part of that, for sure.
Yes. How did you get that gig?
I got that gig on my birthday. Was it like 2008, 9? And I got a missed call at midnight from a producer friend I had done a few other films with. And I thought it was a missed call or something, because it's midnight. Who calls at midnight, But then I was like, I got a text back, call me back. I'm like, okay, I'm going to call back. Let's hope I'm not waking him up or whatever. And I called him back. I said, yeah, so we got this situation and we need a composer. It dubs in 3 weeks. And are you interested? And, at that point, they were actually kind of out of most their financial resources and time resources as well. But then I found out about the film. I found out about the cast and everybody, and that was a big investment on my part, because I actually took the entire money that they gave me, because once I found it's a period piece, I said I don't want to do this in the box. It has to be a real orchestra. And this is again another time in my life where I really could have used the money, but I took all that money and actually even paid more from my own pocket and recorded it with an orchestra. And I wrote that score in about 2 weeks-ish, 2 weeks, 2 days. It was one of those, we were mixing the score as they were dubbing and working in tandem situation. But it was a wonderful experience. And Dan Adams is a great director. And it was, all good things.
And suddenly there you were.
And there I was.
On the red carpet.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that people don't know all the backstory. That's what we try to do here on Storyophonic, is say, people don't appear out of nowhere.
Right.
It's a long thing until it reaches its point.
What's that saying? It takes years to become an overnight success, right?
Exactly. It's interesting. We talk about mediums changing so much.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned before what a composer is now expected to do is not just write music, but it's also you're producing, you're bringing in people. I mean, you bring in musicians, I would imagine, for certain projects.
Right.
I mean, you conduct. I mean, it's more than one thing. It's a lot of different things.
It's fun.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes it fun. And doing things that, we don't grow by doing the same things that we do. Comfort doesn't really lend itself to growth. When you're uncomfortable, and uncomfortable, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative thing. It just means that, okay, I'm not really sure how to do this, but I'll figure it out. And then you figure it out. You're like, yeah, I didn't know how to do this just last week, but now I can do it. And that gives you more confidence, and that makes you want to learn even more and more. It becomes like a little addiction.
The thought of using live instruments in combination with electronics. I mean, you mentioned early on, with Light Keepers, you didn't want to do that, as you called it, in the box. It needed to be something else. I mean, how do you make that determination? Is that a practical determination, a sonic determination, emotional, to bring in live players as opposed to using samples?
I mean, I'm a big fan of humans in general.
Great.
So, there's just nothing like real musicians. And some things they need to be electronic, and that's fine. But anytime I can bring a human element, I will. Even on Krypton, on episode 5, I brought in a vocalist that I worked with in the past that I love her voice. Her name is Liz Constantine. Uh-huh. And she sang on several of the cues. Her voice was pretty much throughout the episode. But as soon as you hear that human element, it's just, there's a connection that's just so hard to attain with samples. And I've been doing that even, on scores that couldn't afford anything. and things had to be in the box. I would bring, one cellist, one violinist or something, because just human mind, our ears, as soon as we hear something live, we kind of perceive it as all of it is live. It's interesting how that works. So it's always a great investment, no matter what, just to have that human element.
It's great to get to have access to social media things right now. Is that a part of your consciousness? I know you have a Twitter account. You post information on Twitter. We can follow you.
Right.
I mean, there's YouTube videos of you conducting and doing different things. I mean, how much of that comes into play in your consciousness, of communicating with people outside of your immediate world?
Yeah, Instagram has really kind of changed things because it's very visual, and it's more than just sharing links all the time, and it's just sharing little bits, and once you have that visual connection, I think it's pretty cool. Again, I live in a very solitary world, right? So I like to share things, and I like it when people can kind of see little glimpses of how things get done, with sessions and things. And occasionally there'll be some odd pictures I'll post of my cocktail or something, but yeah, I think it's just out of sight, out of mind, and it's good to have that connection.
Yeah, especially with the visual world. I mean, they're fans of composition,
right?
And sometimes they're kind of unusual personalities, and they're isolated pockets of them, and they communicate with message boards and forums and different places like that.
Yeah,
you get to meet folks that are fans of your work.
Yes, it's been really, really lovely. Yeah, I love it.
And do you enjoy speaking on panels?
I do. It's been a muscle that I'm kind of slowly growing, because again, I'm in my natural state. I'm just alone and doing my thing. So talking to a lot of people wouldn't come naturally to me, but I'm getting more comfortable at it, and I'm really enjoying it, because for me, the biggest thing, hopefully, is inspiration. So if I can inspire one person in an entire panel to do something that they weren't doing the day before, that's success. So it's not my personal, I don't do it because the main reason is I want to promote something. It's just more about inspiring people, and, yeah.
Because as you mentioned, the odds were against you coming up. You're a woman, and you are from a country we don't necessarily identify with traditional film music,
right,
necessarily. I mean, you came a long way to do this. What would you tell your 12-year-old self if you could go back into that moment?
Keep going. Yeah, because that's really all it is. Don't listen to anyone. Really, I mean, I think it's fine-tuning your own gut. There are always lots of reasons for not doing something.
Sure.
Those are called excuses, not really reasons. But then, if you know that nothing else will make you as happy as the thing that, as much as the thing that you want to do, you have no choice but to do it. I think you owe the world to give it your best.
You mentioned Prince of Egypt as being a real seminal influence. Are there other scores that influenced you or that really kind of illuminated your path?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many. And, composers, I can just name composers. I'm a huge Hans Zimmer fan. I think a lot of his scores have really touched me, and the production was just so massive. Everything was just so much heart. And even when things are small and delicate or just massive and huge, you don't lose the intensity and the passion and the heart. And Ennio Morricone, John Barry, Jerry Goldsmith, John Williams. I love John Powell, Thomas Newman. Lots of influences.
That's a pretty deep list. Yeah. Good. You came to music obviously very intuitively and very early on in your life as a thing. If you were to have an alternate career, not doing music, is there another path that you would have gone down? Anything else?
There was a brief period in my life where I really wanted to be an astronaut. I was fascinated with space, so I would probably like to explore that. Or if I ever retire, which I don't think is ever going to happen, maybe, sailing instructor or something like that.
You could sail around the world.
Yeah.
You could sail on a ship to another planet.
That would be interesting.
Fortunately, your music allows us to do all of those things with you, and we're so happy to have you as our guest
Thank you
on
so much.
Stereophonic.
Thank you.
At Stereophonic, we are obsessed with great sound. Every episode of our podcast is edited and mixed using the software plugins created by iZotope, the secret weapon of professionals around the world that inspire and enable creativity, save time, increase productivity, and deliver professional sounding results. To find out more, visit iZotope.com. That's spelled I-Z-O-T-O-P-E. And now, back to our podcast. We are up in the mountains of Malibu at an amazing recording retreat, which is the studio and home of songwriter and producer Dave Bassett. Hey, Dave. Thanks for having us up here.
Oh, man, it's great to have you. I don't get a lot of visitors up here, so it's good to have some folks up here.
I was going to say, we thought we might encounter a buffalo on the road or something.
Bobcat, perhaps, mountain lion, fox, deer, rattlesnakes, but no buffalo.
All right, we'll keep looking. As a listener to music and a fan of music, there's certain songs that I do remember the first time that I ever heard them. And I remember the first time I heard X's and O's. It was in the back of a neighbor's Prius. We were headed somewhere.
I don't know if I want to hear that.
Oh, and it came on, and my first impression was it sounded like it was from another time. I wasn't sure what time that was. And I remember thinking that the vocal was so outrageous. I said, oh, that's got to be a British singer. But of course it wasn't. Elle King wasn't. But I first thought it was like a UK kind of a thing. But it sounded like it came from this whole other place historically. You know, nothing. It didn't sound like anything else.
Yeah, it was certainly nothing intentional. You know, I had met Elle. We had written one other time, and you know what we do a lot as writers, especially today. You know, we get limited amount of time with people, so you're often on a speed date, and you're trying to get to know someone, and you're trying to bring out their deepest feelings and write something relevant to them. Yet you've just met them, and it's always a challenge. And a lot of times I say, well, I'm half songwriter, half therapist, and in Elle's case, she's an incredible personality. She's just, bursts with life. And when she came in that first day, she's just telling me about all kinds of, there was no tiptoeing around it, relationships coming and going, this and that. And it was, she's kind of all over the place. And it's funny because I, then had another session with her, and I had this title, X's and O's, sitting in my phone. And I'm like, that's what it means. It's all about her relationships. And so she came in, I presented the idea to her, and then she thought it was great. And I think almost unconsciously as we're talking about it, I was playing the riff on the guitar. And I'd been listening to a lot of Tom Waits around that time, I think, and kind of had this kind of old, dirty riff going on in my head subconsciously that just kind of came out. And that song we wrote in probably an hour. It was one of those that just falls out of the sky.
You demoed it at the time that you wrote it, correct?
We demoed it, and that's what you're hearing right now. She sang it, 2 or 3 times. I played the finger drums, triggering my samples, and laid down some guitar, and it was pretty raw. And that was it. And it sounded good, and we turned it into the label, and her A&R guy, David Walter, really liked the song, but she just wasn't creating much of a buzz in the building at the time, so it kind of went unnoticed at the higher levels for a minute. And then when Peter Edge had finally heard it months later, he's like, "That's the sound we've been looking for her record. Let's circle around this song." And so when David called me to tell me the news, I'm like, "Great, get her back here. We'll get her band. We'll do this for real." And it's like, "What are you talking about? This is done. Let's just go mix this." And I thought, "Wow, that was easy." So wish it was that easy all the time, but. So, from then on, I really paid extra attention to what was going on and making sure, my sounds are good, when people were laying down the scratch vocal, because I don't even consider demos anymore. It's the beginning of making a record.
Sure. So the DNA is always there, no matter what it becomes.
Sure, and when a singer isn't thinking about it, if you put a singer on a microphone and you say, "Okay, this is it, this is your record, this is," and they know this is the session for the definitive recording, you're going to get a different energy out of them than if hey, just lay it down. You just made this up. Lay it down. Let me have it. No holds barred, and you get a great energy, and they're not overthinking it. And Elle's a great singer, regardless. So you could wake her up on Sunday morning and have her sing a song, and she'd do it perfectly. But for the most part, a lot of artists, I've had better results when they're not aware that it's going to be a final vocal.
This is such a great room. it's just very vibey. There's a lot to see in the room. There's a lot to feel.
You're teasing the listeners.
I am. I could describe it, but looking out there, I see nothing but mountains.
Right.
And expansion, because we tend to think of the recording world as being very, very, very insular.
Sure, and I've had so many people come up and say, wow, this is the first studio I've been in that has natural light. And then, and people do tend to, want to be outside and at least look outside and take it all in. And I do think being away from the city, after being in LA, in the mix of it for so long, this is a completely different energy up here. And it allows artists to, disconnect from the distractions and really just focus on, what they can control at the time, which is really the creativity between me and them. And it's been great.
One of the odder things in your acclaimed discography,
and
I had to dig a little bit to see what this was, and it's back from a while back, but it's Josh Groban with Herbie Hancock.
Sure.
What is that?
That's a great one. So my publisher at DreamWorks was Molly Kay, and Molly was involved with the Josh Groban record. She was consulting and putting together collaborations for him, and I hadn't done anything near that world, nor did I really belong in that world, from an outside standpoint. But Molly called and said that Josh had a track that was a little bit more rockin', and that he's looking for a lyric for it, and he had a concept, and this concept dealt with someone that it was a delicate process, because he was dealing with a certain executive that he wanted to write this song about. But he's a good guy. He's not gonna blatantly slam someone, especially someone on his team. So this was without mentioning names, it was a tricky process to write this lyric and have it mean what he wants, but for him to still feel comfortable singing this song. And so I was at my in-laws back in Illinois, and I had the track, and I just wrote this lyric and sent it to him, and we started collaborating long distance. And then we went into David Foster's studio here in Malibu and recorded the vocals. And it was cool that actually came through, because again, that was at a time where I was just still trying to find myself, and any cut at that level was a real victory. And any Josh Groban cut's a victory, because it's a big cut. So it was great to get to know him a little bit. He's a good guy, and it's cool to have something in that lane where no one would expect that from me. And I've always prided myself on being able to wear a bunch of different hats. Put me in a room with anyone, and I'll be able to hold my own. And cuts like that kind of display that.
As most writers do. I mean, obviously the film and television world are a big part of what writers here do. And you've also definitely participated in that world, as well as the commercial world. The Sing franchise.
Oh yeah, the folks at Universal are awesome, and I got a call I hadn't worked with them yet, and I got a call from my publisher at the time saying, hey, and I remember it was like 6 or 7 at night. I just finished a session. I was really burnt, and it's like, hey, here's this brief I'm sending you, and it was basically, we need a bad punk rock song, for this movie. And I'm like, man, I can do that in my sleep, but I'm too tired. I'm not going to do it. So I went down and had dinner, hanging out with my family, and then the guilt kind of crept in. I was like, this is an easy one. You got to go for this. And so I came back up, and maybe in an hour or so just cranked out this, because there was a lyric already written by the director, Garth. So it was a pretty easy assignment. So I wrote this bad punk rock song called I Don't Wanna, turned it in. Of course, it was something that they needed tomorrow, absolute deadline. So I did my deals, turned it in, and then crickets. And I'm like, oh, I guess that went away. And then literally like 3 months later, you get a call, hey, they love that song. I'm like, well, I thought they needed it like the next day, but okay, that's good that they want it. I had a meeting with them and kind of got a view of the film, and those animated pictures, they take so long to make, and so they really, when especially when the song is involved, they need the song first, because then they have to animate to it, and they have to make sure it's it's correct with the guitar and the vocal and all that. And so that was my kind of entrance into that film. And then they say, this was for the porcupine, this character, Scarlett Johansson's character, but the other part of her character, she's writing a song throughout this movie, which ends up being a big moment, and it's a going to end up being a big song at the end of the film. And I didn't know which songs it was going to be, wedged between. But, the nature of that movie was these are all famous songs, American Idol-esque. And now there's going to be an original song kind of wedged in there. And that's a tall order. So anyway, I took a swing at it and on my own wrote this song called Set It All Free. So unlike the major motion picture music department, they had very few notes. It was almost like a first draft that went all the way. It was really fun because they had this big guitar solo moment in the middle of it. And then I find out that it's going to go in between, I'm Still Standing and I forgot what was the other Stevie Wonder song. And, you hear the two totally iconic songs, and my song's going to be wedged in the middle. It's like, oh, it's really nerve-wracking, but, it worked out great, and it felt good in the movie, and, that was really fun. So working with those folks, then I was able to pitch something for, no pun intended, for Pitch Perfect 3. Yes. It's just really fun. It's just a whole other side of the business. Just uses a different part of your brain. Now you're locking into a different audience. You're using picture with the music, film and TV music, versus making records is, for me, it's a great way to break up the process. And just like writing and producing, if I do the same thing every day, I tend to repeat myself. I get bored. I get burnt out. But having these different lanes to walk down, it keeps me fresh.
The Vance Joy stuff is really great. He's such a wonderful artist, and I love the record.
Thank you.
It's very upbeat. If I put together a playlist of your stuff, which I did, to listen to kind of prep, a lot of it's very elevated. A lot of it makes me feel better.
Oh, thanks. Well, I guess, people come in, they don't want to write most of the time a moody B-side, so I'm kind of, in the mindset of, let's get some energy. Not a lot of people want to write, out of the gates a down tempo, or they don't want me to help them write a down tempo song. So I think, by nature of the assignment, as a writer, being set up on these co-writes, people expect, they want to hit. And so I tend to start out of the gates a little bit more upbeat, maybe a little more positive because of that. But I do enjoy getting to the, hopefully spending enough time with an artist where you get to, reach these other depths and levels with them and write something that's a little bit more artsy or not a single. And, back to the film and TV thing, that's been a real eye-opener for me. Is like, if I'm not feeling a song, as a radio song, then I'm now instantly thinking, okay, how can this fit in the film and TV world? Still get some exposure for this artist, still have a successful day. And now, if I'm going down that lane, then the walls are down. It can be a 6-minute song. It can have a 2-minute intro. It's better if it has a lot more dynamics, and that's a lot of fun too. And just a different lane to go down that keeps me motivated and brings out a lot in an artist.
And the international element of our business as well. Vance Joy is Australian, correct?
Yeah.
And so even though we're maybe in discovery mode with him here, he already has a very, very substantial worldwide fan base, which is interesting. What do you think's missing? Do you ever think of like what is missing? There's this concept sometimes of like, because our business is so cyclic.
World peace?
There's that.
A sane leader
A sane leader, yeah. Well, look, we can't blame you because Fight Song was Fight Song not used in a certain political campaign.
That's a real disappointment.
It is. It is.
But it was great levels.
It's great to see that. It's great to see Hillary come out in a pantsuit to that song.
Yeah, I mean, again, seeing that song take a whole other leap when you thought where else can it go, and then it goes there. Yeah, that was amazing, and very proud that it was not the other side's theme. But everyone put the cease and desist on that pretty quick. They're like, nope, not my song, not my song.
Preaching to the choir here.
Yeah.
But in the cyclic moment of what we hear, I mean, obviously, none of us can predict what's coming next, but sometimes things are more melodic, sometimes they're more rhythmic.
Well, I think the rhythmic nature of things isn't going away. It's been an evolution and has shown how infectious it is at all levels. And when you start to see, country incorporate some, hip hop beats and all that, I think that's a positive thing. And I think that's great, but I feel like we have to also, again, come back to the song. And, I feel like maybe we're missing a little bit of that now. But, a little buried under production maybe right now. There's some interesting production going on, no doubt about it, and I'm all for that. But, when the sounds eclipse the song, it's not a healthy thing. And I think it's not missing, but I think it's probably on the downside of its cycle.
Sure. Let's explore that a little bit because, one of the questions that I have sometimes asked people is the line, the sort of indelible line between production and writing, like what is writing and what is production? How do they work together, or how are they separate?
Well, they've certainly become more harmonious over in the last decade. Again, with laptop recording and samples, and people, producers, writers using Splice, as a tool to write. Dragging in samples that are free to use, free and clear to use. It's great to have these tools, but again, I think you have to then use it to inspire a great song. And for me, when I first discovered loops, it was so refreshing because I'd been writing all my songs on guitar and falling in the same strumming patterns, same chord patterns. You can only do so much with that one instrument. But then now all of a sudden I got this loop. Beck comes around and wow, he's got an acoustic guitar and a loop, and that just is such an eye opener. And now we're at a such completely different level from that, where you've got an infinite amount of sounds and grooves and everything to work from and be inspired from, and so I think it's a great inspiration if it leads to a song, and others that just look pretty on the wall.
I've got a great side view of this Strat here. It looks like it's got a tale to tell.
Yeah, unfortunately, those tails are someone else's tails. It's a 1962 white Strat, and I've only had it about 7 or 8 years, so I've kept it in as good a condition as anyone. But it's got some dings on it.
I think it belonged to Dick Dale. Do you have a go-to guitar? Is there one guitar that, like for you, is just sort of like the go-to?
It goes in waves. If I'm doing some heavy rock stuff, I'll grab that Les Paul. If I'm doing something that's kind of alternative and clean, I'll grab the Jazz Master, just because it's so great for that Tom York tone or what have you. And then but the 335 I think is probably my most versatile guitar, and I enjoy playing that probably the most.
How do projects come to you?
My manager is often fielding a lot of calls from the labels, and going around taking meetings. I have a lot of relationships at all the labels now. It's like all the kids I grew up with are now presidents and high level executives. It just happens, It's by nature of time. So there's a lot of connections through there, but it always comes down to the music and the voice. And my manager and I are very conscious about not just jumping on what's popular or what's the biggest name we can get in the room with, but listening to the voice, listening to where this person's coming from, and so that's how we decide. I listen to I'm sent a couple things a day usually, and at the end of the day I'll listen, and there's certain voices that just raise their hand and say pick me.
Yeah. Dave Bassett, you've written with a lot of different kinds of folks. Do you have a dream collaborator who you would like to write with?
Alive or dead?
Oh, you can call up the dead with this because we're getting to that time of year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't answer that because now that makes me, it's a more difficult question. I mean, it's got to be John Lennon. I mean, without question. But alive and still creating music, I'm such a huge fan of Damon Albarn, and just growing up in my bands, trying to reach the level that he was at in his band at the time, and always kind of chasing his path, and just always marveling at how he's able to move in different directions and still stay super cool.
You mentioned this earlier in the interview. You had a background in finance, but probably not your thing. But
was that a noose or a tie?
That was pick one.
Yeah.
If you weren't doing music, is there an alternate vocation that would have called to you? I
don't think there is one. Now, when I found music, that was it. I tried my alternate vocation, and it was awful. And so even though I did well in college and understand business and appreciate that, investments interest me and stuff, but there's no replacing music.
Well, the finance world's loss is our gain.
Right on.
And we appreciate you being our guest today.
Awesome.
Stereophonic.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Lindy.
Hey, Dan.
We've been down this road a few times.
Yes, we have.
And it's interesting. Every time I've interviewed you, you've been at a different juncture in your career. One of the last times I saw you, we had breakfast out in the Valley, and you were headed to a session where you were not going to be writing songs, but you were going to be writing hooks.
Yes.
And I
That's
thought that was really
probably
interesting.
not my favorite thing, and probably something I've done a lot less frequently, which is going where they have a DJ or something and they have tracks and they want you to write a hook. I do that occasionally. I don't feel it pays off as well for me. I'm still by far prefer getting in the room with musicians, musician producer, probably another top liner who sings better than I, or an artist, and just creating in the room. That's still what I do 95% of the time, and my favorite way to work.
You've mentioned the chemistry sometimes, as you just said, with the three. So it's another top liner and then and the artist.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it's four, because sometimes it's a production team. Sometimes they want, for some reason, another top liner, or there's a top lining team, and then they want to add me. Sometimes the artist is a duo, and sometimes I do 50-50s. I mean, I still love occasionally doing that with certain people. We don't hire demo singers as much as we used to, but sometimes we do that. And so I'll do, sometimes there's 6 in the room. I try to avoid that, but sometimes you have a boy band, and then there's a producer and the top liner. So it's always different. But 3 feels like a magic number, and it's probably my favorite.
Good. In 2015, I reached out to a management company that was representing a songwriter who I vibed was emerging, and I interviewed her, and it was her first ever interview for print. It was for Music Connection magazine, and that writer told me that she did not want to be an artist. She wanted to only be a songwriter. I know where this is going, because she wanted to be able to wear her bedroom slippers to the studio, quote. And she was very influenced by you, and that's Julia Michaels, the artist, who has since emerged. I mean, I think 3 months after I interviewed her, she wrote "Sorry" for Justin Bieber came out, and then she just blew up as an artist, and now she's with Republic Records, and it's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But she related to me things that she had learned from you, and one of the things was that you taught her to be less precious about the song.
I mean, I remember it distinctly because, and I always say first, my dear friend Julian Bell had been working with Julia and had, helped her, developed her a lot. I heard her voice, one bar, and I just knew, and started working with her. And I remember our first session, and she came in with the page and an idea on the page, and I just said, just go to the mic and vibe it. Now, this is not always the case, but I felt it for her that she had so much. And that's the way we worked for a couple of years, where we would take turns on the mic and just see what we were feeling, get the right chords. And I think she really learned her way of writing, although I have to say you can't really learn it. You have to have it inside you. But she was somebody that had it inside her. Now, sometimes I work with writers that come with ideas and come with starts and all that, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. But for her, she's so emotional and intuitive. And when she hears the right chords and is inspired, she just closes her eyes, and it was magical. And we had a good run with that. And I think it's great that she became an artist, because I think at some point her sound was so distinctly her that she was given to other artists. And I think finally she was persuaded to do it and broke through, all of these fears and anxieties, and because she really has a very unique thing.
Yes.
But I think I just helped her sort of open that door.
But she said you can do that too. She said you can go in, right, and just hear something and just start.
That's what I've always done.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
I only very occasionally in my career have I had a title. Skyscraper is a strange example of that. A couple of times, or a little bit of an idea, but 95% of the time, it just happens in the room. That's just how it happens. The music has to inspire me. The vibe has to inspire me, but it comes out. It just, and hopefully there's great people to collaborate with. And I love to listen to other people's ideas. And like with Julia and I, it would be great. We both sing a bunch of stuff, and then we listen and be like, this melody's great, but we love this lyric, or this, in the beginning, I think I did more of the lyrics. She did more. It just, but that is how I do it. I mean, I always say it's just mysterious. I just feel like it's kind of handed down or something. Mm-hmm. It's always been a mysterious process for me. But once I start overthinking, it kind of ruins it for me. Now, sometimes you just vomit out all this stuff, and then you have to use craft to craft it better and listen objectively. And I think this part's too long, or I think this part could be stronger. Or, of course, when I'm working with an artist, it's very different too. Like Julia and I wrote songs for pitching. Mm-hmm. When you're working with an artist, you need to listen to their ideas and what they want to express. But sometimes I'll write down, they'll be like, oh, my boyfriend and I, blah, blah. And I'll just start writing down all these things and just ideas just start coming. But it's very inspired by what they're doing. And hopefully, we get on the same wavelength.
That cross-generational thing is interesting because obviously at the time you were working with her, she was very, very young. She's still very young.
Yeah, she's still very young. She was, I think, 17 or 18. And, it took a couple of years. And I helped her in a lot of ways to get her, to open doors for her. But that was simply just because in the beginning, everything that we wrote got cut. And there was a lot of singles, too.
Yeah.
And everybody was just like, who's this girl? So, I mean, it really... People always say I mentored her, but she helped me too because it's finding people that keep me relevant. And we just had amazing chemistry and had a lot of success together. So that's really what it was.
You referenced a song which has been a real big song in your catalog. And it was actually something I was listening to this morning with Skyscraper, Demi Lovato. And, it's an amazing song. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, that song is another one that is means so much and was written it was Curly, who's this fabulous Estonian artist, and Toby Gad. I came to New York and I just had the title. I was just like, I like this title. And I remember Toby saying I don't like this title. It doesn't sing well. But then he started playing that beautiful piano and then Curly started drawing these pictures and experience she's had in Estonia. And it just still came together as this emotional experience of all three of us. But it's almost like channeled or something in a way that it wasn't for me, oh, I'm going through this really tough time. I mean, I think it was for all of us just sort of became this thing. And then John Lind, who I just adore, heard it and wanted it for Demi. And at the time I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would Demi do this song? And then of course I didn't know she had been in rehab and had gone through all these things. And when I finally heard the performance and saw the video, I was like, oh, this was meant for her the whole time. Because it was originally for Curly, and then Jordan Sparks did it, and it just was waiting. It was just one of those songs that was waiting. And to me, that's just, the ultimate version. And I'm so honored that she just recently did it at the gun control rally. And I'm very proud of that one, that it seems to, the ultimate compliment is people saying that song helped me in some way. I mean, I've even read stuff on there that, I didn't cut today or throw up today because of this song, and that to me means more than anything.
Wow.
That's meaningful to people. And it's meaningful to me still.
You referenced a co-writer, Toby Gad, that you wrote that with, who's a very interesting writer.
Oh, yeah. He's such an interesting person.
Yeah.
Toby is now very involved in a lot of amazing causes, orangutan rescue and environmental causes and just branching, surfing. He's an avid surfer and I love and he's still, of course, very much creating, but just more specifically of artists that he really believes in. And I think this is how people, as we get a bit older, people branch off in certain ways, but he's just a fascinating person.
He told me that when he came to the U.S., that he'd had a deal, I think it was with Sony Publishing in Europe, and he came and he had a catalog of 800 songs, and he didn't think that they were worthy, and he ditched them and started over, which I thought was amazing.
I do think Big Girls Don't Cry may have come from that catalog.
That's true.
I think that, Jim Villatato looked through and found it and said, you guys should revisit this song. And it ended up being, ASCAP Song of the Year. I think it was probably Grammy nominated. I don't know, but yeah.
That was great. And I think they wrote that at Fergie when she was living with her mom and she was on unemployment. So,
I mean, wow, talk about a great publisher that just goes back and listens through who does that. But that was, incredible. And it launched, But he's the real deal. That's
very cool. So a day in your life, how many days a week are you doing writing sessions now?
I mean, I used to do 5 for years. And now I'm down to 4, and I'm trying to even get it down to 3 because I always find that there's a surprise day. So my 4 ends up being 5 because it's always like, uh-oh, so-and-so canceled. Can you do this? Or this artist is in town. They had an opening. So often, almost every week, there's a surprise session and usually a surprise cancellation. But I find that I need a day for sending songs out and organizing things. And occasionally I will write a lyric to something from another country where they want me to, do a lyric or change something. So there's work to do at home. So I like to have time to do that. And I like to have weekends now free for my boyfriend and my family and his daughter is now staying with us. So family time and alone time. I need alone time. So sometimes that has to be a weekday where I just go off and go to a cafe or go wander around or see a movie by myself or something that fills me up. And that's one thing, being in a relationship, it's like really, really different. So I just need that day of alone time that I've done, in London, in New York. When I was living in New York, I've always been just have a wandering day, which I don't have as much as I should these days, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to do a lot of that because there weren't a lot of sessions. It's a lot of wandering.
Can you write to track?
I can, and I do. Julie and I did that a lot. And I still do, in the sense of, there'll be quite a few sessions where even all of these producers that I mentioned, they'll have a track idea. And we'll start writing to it. But then we might switch it around or be like, that part sounds like it should be the chorus, or can you do another part? And sometimes we'll just say, no, let's just write a piano or guitar. But I can write the track. I do write the track. I did it recently for this David Guetta camp. I had a big hit with that, Dangerous featuring Sam Martin, which was a track. I've had a few hits writing the track, but it's never been my very favorite way to go. Even like I said, yes, if there's a track in the room, that's a start, and then we can modify it and make it, we don't have to stick to exactly what it is. But somebody sending a track and sitting in the room and writing to it I've just never really had success doing that.
I think that's a thing that it's an earlier career thing, where somebody will get a track from a producer and they expect it to come up with a top line.
And people still do that a lot, and a lot of people work best to track, but it's just, I like to hang, and that's a lot of the reason why I think people that I've worked with for years, and I go to Nashville and work with Chris DiStefano and Shai Carter and people that I know, because it's like, I know we have a great hang and a great conversation, or that sometimes is how you click with people, is the first hour is you're just talking about life, or you're ordering lunch, and it's like a great day. You have a fun day, and then you create something. I mean, what could be better?
Yeah. Do you do that? Do you ever do that Nashville thing of the multiple sessions?
I don't really. I've never been good with multiple sessions because I think I work fast and furious. I kind of burn myself out a little. I'm not somebody who sits and thinks about the lyrics. I mean, sometimes I have to really hold myself back. But if I'm with another writer or an artist and I'm like, I've learned over the years, like, I need to shut up. I need to literally put tape over my mouth and give them a chance to think. Because, Evan and I, it's like insanity. We're so fast. But not everybody's that fast. And I don't think that it's good or bad to be fast or slow. It's just how you are and how you write, I mean, Want to Want Me probably took the longest. We changed that song so many times and revised it so many times. And that ended up being the biggest song of my career.
Wow.
So sometimes people have to be like, stop. This needs to be better, but usually it just is what it is. And
were you revising on somebody's direction, or?
Yeah. Well, the first lyric, and I've said this before, was Girl from New York City.
Right.
So we wrote that at the camp, and then we got back to fix it. And then Ian and Sam were like, that's terrible. I was like, no, it's good. And they're like, no. So then came up with Want to Want Me, which I thought was the simplest thing. I was just like, what? And they were like, that's great. And I'm like, really? So then we did that. And then Mike Karen, who's an amazing A&R person, had more suggestions. And it just kind of grew from there. And Derulo was part of it. And it just had a lot of revisions. I mean, didn't take that long. But for me, I think we had 3 sessions on that song and making it what it was.
Yeah.
And then Ian, went insane. But I mean, that track really established his career. I mean, it's a brilliant track.
Yeah, it's an incredible track.
Yeah.
And Jason's performance is fabulous.
Oh, incredible. And Sam is an incredible singer.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam, you hear him on Dangerous. I mean,
yes.
Nobody sings like Sam, so he, it was, yeah. And Jason took it even to another place. And then he did it with Luke Bryan. I mean, that was incredible.
Wow.
They performed it a couple of times. A few of the songs. I think they did It Girl as well.
That's so interesting.
I know. They did a TV show. I forget what it's called. It's like Crossing Bridges or something, where they put pop and country artists together.
I think. Yeah.
Crossroads, yeah. And they did a few. I think it was.
I love
pretty
that.
sure it was It Girl. I might be getting it wrong. Sam's an incredible melody. I mean, incredible.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those melodies. And when I worked with Sam, and I still work with Sam occasionally, but we work differently because he really likes to have the melody there, and then I do the lyrics. Not my favorite way to work, and we butt heads a lot, but we get incredible stuff. So sometimes I have to get out of my comfort zone, and I need to work with people that get me out of my comfort zone. And I did that a bit with Julia as well, because she would do really interesting things, and I would just be like, well, you know what? Let's go with this because it feels great. Like, so I've learned a lot from people that have taken me out of my comfort zone.
And as you mentioned before, people that might be in a different age thing where they don't know these, whatever these rules might be.
Yeah. And the rules no longer
No,
exist.
they don't.
So the most important thing, I think, for anybody to remember is that they no longer exist. You know, you just, I mean, yeah, there's rhyme still exists for a reason and rhythm and certain things and melodies or certain chords that just work over the time. But I just think people could come out with something really unique right now and have a smash with it. I mean, I remember when Stressed Out came out. It's one of my favorite songs of the last 5 years. And it's just completely unique. I absolutely, that was one of those songs that just stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, this is incredible. What is this? You know? And there's, I mean, New Rules, that's an incredible song.
Yeah. Well, you're listening a lot. You spend a lot of time with the radio.
I do.
We got a couple stereophonic questions for you.
Yes.
If we may.
Of course.
So you don't get to think about these too much, unless you want to think about them. The number one would be a dream collaborator for you, somebody that you would like to write with whom you have never written.
I mean, can I say like Paul McCartney?
You can.
I mean, Paul McCartney, Burt Bacharach, and that almost happened a couple times.
Wow.
I don't know how well he is at the moment. Sheryl Crow. I'm a huge Sheryl Crow fan. I would love to work with Sheryl Crow. I've always done better with like Ian, you know, Eamon I discovered, which he says I discovered. Julia, I co-discovered. Like a lot of the people are more up and coming that I've had the best luck with and the biggest hits with, rather than going with the Dr. Luke's or the Max Martins or the, you know, the hottest. But for me, it's just, it hasn't really happened that way. So it's just been hearing like my managers or my publishers will send something. What do you think? And I'm like, wow, I really like this. Let me try working with them. And then it just kind of, or I hear something and I just know I need to work with them.
Got it. If somebody was going to listen to your catalog and really distill the essence of who you are from one or two songs, like what songs would you recommend they listen to?
That's really a tough one. I mean, there's a new one that will be out soon.
Good.
Which is Andra Day's Amen. And I'm very, very, very proud of that song. And it's like on a car commercial right now, but it's not on camera, but I think it will be on camera soon. I think you heard me sing it at the ASCAP. I think you might be able to hear me, look it up and hear me sing it at the last ASCAP Expo.
Oh, cool.
That song is so important to me. I feel like it was like channeled almost. I think the Skyscraper is a really important one for me. Because Want to Want Me is just sort of an accident. And I think that's an incredible, fun song to listen to, but I don't think it really defines me so much as a writer. I think it was a very lucky moment.
You know.
Incomplete, actually.
Yeah,
I have to bring up Incomplete because that was one of the first, and it was really a sound, and What's Left of Me. That was the sound that we did at the time. I think Incomplete, What's Left of Me, as the earlier part of my career, and then it went to the sort of it girl, classic, really clever kind of thing that Eman, Evan, and I did, which was another genre, and then onto some of the Julia stuff, and then to the current, you know, the Skyscrapers, the Amens, and some of the rhythmic stuff. So that was way more than one or two.
Well, that's pretty good. We can put together a playlist from all of that.
Yeah.
And get the essence of you. Lindy Robbins, it's I will look forward to the next time we get to converse because every time it's something else.
Me
it's
too.
Something else.
Me
and
too.
Your longevity and your inspiration, your energy for this are just truly inspiring.
Oh, thank you. You too. I mean, you're amazing, and we've been doing this a long time.
Down this road, baby.
Yes.
And now we're here on Stereophonic. This episode of Stereophonic was produced and edited by Lindsay Tomasik.